Hello students, today we start a new chapter that is combustion and flame. So the question is, what is combustion? Actually, when a substance burns in presence of oxygen and it produces heat and light. So it's a chemical process. So such type of chemical process actually known as combustion. So we can say that a type of chemical process in which a substance reacts with oxygen to give heat and light is called combustion. This light, which is formed during the combustion, can be in form of light or it can be in form of glow. For example, if you notice that when a wood burns, then it produces flame. But when a charcoal burn, it produces a red hot light or it is a red hot glow. So there are so many examples of combustion, that is burning of wood, burning of paper, combustion of charcoal, combustion of magnesium. So anything which is burned is called combustion. So the first example is combustion of magnesium. Magnesium is a metal. So when this magnesium burns in presence of air, here air is the source of oxygen. So we can say that when magnesium burns in presence of oxygen, then it produces magnesium oxide, that is a metallic oxide. Because here magnesium is a metal, so it reacts with oxygen to produce magnesium oxide, and with this it produces heat and light. So it is a very common examples of combustions. Next one is combustion of charcoal. Carbon is the main compound of charcoal. So when a charcoal is burned, it means burning of carbon in presence of oxygen. So during the burning of charcoal, it produces carbon dioxide with heat and light. So if you notice that in both of this example, one thing is common, that is oxygen. So oxygen is very necessary for combustion to take place. Actually, without oxygen, no combustion is possible. So oxygen is a supporter of combustion. In our body, the respiration process is also an example of combustion, because during this respiration process, actually glucose or carbohydrate burn in presence of oxygen, which we inhale during our breath. So this oxygen actually used in combustion reaction in every cell, which react with glucose to produce carbon dioxide. So it is also an examples of combustion reaction. Those substances which can burn are called combustible substances, and similarly those substances which do not burn are called non-combustible substances. For example, if you notice that wood, charcoal, straw, paper, alcohol, diesel, petrol, so this type of substances are called combustible substances because this can burn easily in presence of oxygen. But some substances like stone, cement, glass, soil, sand, etc., this type of substances cannot burn. So these are called non-combustible substances. There are mainly three conditions which are very necessary for combustion to take place. These are presence of a combustible substance, that is a suitable substance which can easily burn in presence of oxygen. Second one is presence of a supporter of combustion like oxygen, because in presence of oxygen or oxygen is very necessary for combustion, so must be there present oxygen. And third one is heating the combustible substance to its ignition temperature. Ignition temperature means the lowest temperature at which a substance catch fire and starts burning is called the ignition temperature. So these are three conditions which is very necessary for combustion. So first one is presence of a combustible substances. The combustible substances which is easily burned during the combustion and easily catch fire. So it is very necessary to presence of a combustible substances for a combustion to take place. So the examples of combustible substances, and we can say that a combustible substances is actually the food of fire because it quickly catch fire. Next one is supporter of combustions, and air is necessary for combustion. So here we can say that air is the supporter of combustions which we have around us. So there are so many activities by which we can easily explain this fact that oxygen is very important for combustions. For example, if you covered a burning charcoal with a glass or with a vessel, then after some time you can notice that it stopped burning. So when you covered this burning charcoal with a gas jar or with a glass, then the supply of fresh air to the burning charcoal is cut off. So without fresh air or without oxygen, it cannot be burned. That's why when the clothes of a person catch fire, the person is covered it with a blanket to extinguish the fire, because when you cover this person with a blanket, then the supply of air to the burning clothes is cut off, and due to this clothes stop burning. So here this blanket actually act as a cover which cut off the air supply. Next one is ignition temperature, and the lowest temperature at which a substance catches fire and starts burning is called its ignition temperature, because for a burning or for a combustion, it is must be heated to a certain minimum temperature by supplying heat from outside. This ignition temperature actually varies with the substance. For example, the ignition temperature of a paper is near about 233 degrees centigrade. This means for a combustion of paper, first you have to supply this minimum temperature so that it catch fire. If you supply less than this ignition temperature, then combustion does not possible. So for different substances, this combustion temperature is different. Some substance may be burned in room temperature, or some substances may be burned in high temperature. If you notice that in our surroundings there are so many substances which can easily catch fire. For example, petrol, LPG, CNG gas, or dry grass. This type of substances, they easily catch fire because the ignition temperature for these substances is very low. So those substances which have very low ignition temperature and can easily catch fire with a flame is called inflammable substance. And there are so many inflammable substances like alcohol, kerosene, CNG, LPG, biogas. So this, even petrol also. So these are the few examples of inflammable substances because these substances easily catch fire. Some substances have high ignition temperature. So for example, wood. So those substances which have high ignition temperature, they catch fire with difficulty. If you notice that a matchstick start burning on rubbing it on the side of the matchbox, because the heat produced by the friction heat. So when you rub this matchstick beside the matchbox, then due to the frictional force, it produces temperature, and this temperature actually sufficient for combustion of this matchstick. Coal has a high ignition temperature, so a coal fire cannot be started by using a lighted matchstick, because the ignition temperature or initiative temperature for burning of coal is very high. So a small heat cannot produced by burning matchstick is not sufficient to heat the coal to its ignition temperature. Sometimes we see or we hear about forest fire, and this forest fire actually occur due to the frictional heat which is produced when two branches of a tree are rubbing with each other. Due to this rubbing, maybe they produce some heat, and if this heat is sufficient for combustion, then it catch fire. And generally this happens in hottest summer day, where all grass are dry and also the plants are very dry, so this can easily catch fire, and it is very difficult to control such forest fire. So from this discussion, it is clear that ignition temperature is very necessary for starting a combustion. You know, it is very difficult to burn a green leaves, but a dry leaves easily catch fire. Why? Because in green leaves there present lots of water. That's why this water does not allow the green leaves to get heated to its ignition temperature easily. Similarly, in dry leaf there no water present, and they get heated to their ignition temperature very easily, and hence they can easily catch fire. You know about matchsticks, and what is matchsticks? A matchstick is a short, thin piece of wood having chemical coated at one end, and when it rubbing, then it produce heat and it catch fire. So white phosphorus is a very common substance for a matchsticks. In old days, a mixtures of antimony trisulfide, potassium chloride and white phosphorus with some glue and also starch was applied to the head of matchsticks, and when these matchsticks rubbed against a rough surface, then this white phosphorus, which is very reactive, and this white phosphorus actually easily catch fire and ignite it due to the heat of friction, and it starts the combustion. But as white phosphorus is very poisonous, so nowadays instead of white phosphorus contains only antimony trisulfide and potassium chloride, and this type of matchsticks called safety match, because here no poisonous white phosphorus used, and it is much less dangerous for us. Sometimes a little red phosphorus used instead of white phosphorus, and this red phosphorus is much less dangerous than white phosphorus, and when this red phosphorus react with potassium chlorate in the matchsticks, then it produces sufficient heat to ignite it antimony trisulfate and make the matchsticks head burn. So this is the chemical reactions behind this burning of matchsticks. The next topic is how do we control the fire? And you know, the process of extinguishing a fire is called firefighting. Any fire need three main things, that is fuel, air and heat. This fuel acts as a combustible substance and air or oxygen, which is a supporting substance, because you know, in absence of air combustion does not possible. And last one is heat. If any one of these three things is removed, then the burning will stop and the fire will be extinguished. So we control fire by removing these three things, that is by removing the fuel or combustible substances, by removing the heat, or by cutting off the air supply to the burning substance. So the first one is remove the fuel. You know, a fuel is a food for fire. So if we remove the all combustible substances, then the fire may not spread. So when fire starts in a room, we remove all the combustible substances like wooden furniture, clothes, books and papers, etc., because these are the combustible substances, and quickly from the room, so that the fire may not spread due to the presence of a large number of combustible substance. So by removing all the combustible substance, we can control the fire. Next one is remove the heat. And here water is used to remove the heat from a burning substances and to make it to cool to burn further. So when water is thrown to a burning substance, it gets cooled below its ignition temperature and stop burning. The fire produced by burning oils and petrols like kerosene and petrol pumps. So this type of fire cannot be extinguished by using water. This is because of the following reason, that water is heavier than oil and petrol. So when water is thrown over burning oil or petrol, it settles down and the oil floats on the water and continue to burn. So fires caused by burning oil cannot be extinguished by pouring water over it. Similarly, when the fire caused by electrical short circuit in an electrical appliance or in electric wiring should not be extinguished by throwing water. This is because ordinary water conducts electricity to some extent. So when water is thrown over the burning electrical appliance, it can give electric shock to the person involved in firefighting. Thus, water cannot be used to extinguish the fires caused by electricity. And next one is cut off the air supply. You know, air is the source of oxygen. So if we cut off this source of oxygen, then fire can be easily in control. And here for this we use carbon dioxide, which is denser than air and form a layer around the burning substances. And carbon dioxide layer covers the fire like blanket, due to which fresh air cannot reach the burning substances. And by this process, fire can be extinguished. Carbon dioxide used for extinguishing fire can be stored as a liquid at high pressure in cylinders called fire extinguishers. When released from the cylinder, carbon dioxide expands enormously in volume and cools down. In this way, carbon dioxide not only form a blanket around the burning substances, it also cools down the burning substances. And this makes carbon dioxide an excellent fire extinguisher. A small type of fire can be extinguished by throwing sands or soil over it, because this soil and sand is non-combustible substances. Even it can also cut off the air supply. So small type of fire can be extinguished by this sand. And the cooking oil fire in a frying pan in a kitchen can be extinguished by covering the pan with a fire blanket or a damp cloth. So these are the few important procedures to extinguish the fire. Okay, for today I think it is enough. Thank you.